8-year-old Oliver was sprawled on the living room floor, tinkering with a little model airplane, his hands moving with the careful precision of someone far older than his years. Nearby, Lily sat at the kitchen table, sifting through wedding magazines with a dreamy smile on her face. Watching his mother from his spot on the floor, Oliver felt a pang of unease he couldn't explain. For as long as he could remember, it had always been just him and his mother. Lily was his whole world, soft-spoken, kind-hearted, and endlessly patient. She'd always been his best friend, especially since the passing of his father when Oliver was still a toddler. Their life together had been simple but happy, filled with quiet evenings spent reading together or walks to the nearby park. And up until recently, that had been enough for both of them. But now, everything felt different. The upcoming wedding had cast a strange, unfamiliar shadow over their small world. Oliver watched as Lily ran her fingers over a picture of a bouquet, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I think these roses would be perfect, don't you think, Ollie?" she asked, glancing up with a bright smile. "Sure, Mom," he replied, not fully understanding the appeal. Flowers were flowers to him. Why did it matter what kind they had at the wedding? Lily chuckled softly and shook her head, her cheeks flushed with happiness. "Oh, you'll see, Ollie. It's going to be a beautiful day. You'll be in a nice suit, standing right beside me." Oliver forced a smile, though his stomach twisted at the thought. He didn't like the idea of his mom getting married, especially not to Michael. There was something about him that Oliver didn't trust, though he couldn't quite put his finger on what it was. Michael was polite, always smiling and making jokes, and seemed to care for his mum. But whenever Oliver looked at him, he felt a shiver run down his spine. "Will Michael be moving in here?" Oliver asked cautiously, his eyes still on the plane in his hands. Lily paused, then nodded gently. "Yes, sweetheart. It'll be like having a bigger family." "Isn't that exciting?" she said, trying to gauge his reaction. But Oliver only nodded, his eyes downcast. He couldn't imagine his home with anyone else in it. It had always been just him and his mum. He didn't know how to share her with anyone else. As the days wore on, Oliver tried to ignore the changes happening around him. He tried to keep his mind busy with school, friends, and his model airplane collection. But everywhere he turned, he felt the encroaching presence of Michael, more of his things appearing in the house, more conversations between him and Lily about the future, as if they were building something he wasn't a part of. One evening, he was walking down the hallway to his bedroom when he overheard his mother talking quietly on the phone. Her voice was soft, filled with warmth and a hint of laughter. At first, he thought she was talking to Michael, but then he heard her say, "I think Oliver's finally starting to warm up to the idea. Well, a little bit anyway." Oliver's heart sank. Was that true? Was he really warming up to Michael? He didn't think so. In fact, he couldn't remember a time when he'd felt more out of place in his own home. As he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, Oliver decided he would try to learn more about Michael. Maybe if he could understand him better, he'd start feeling the same excitement his mum did. Maybe then this strange feeling of worry would go away. The next weekend, Michael came over for dinner, his usual cheerful self, bringing with him a bouquet of lilies, Oliver's mother's favorite. Oliver stayed quiet throughout the meal, observing the man sitting across the table. Michael was tall and well-dressed, with a practiced smile that never seemed to falter. He had an easy laugh, but to Oliver it seemed hollow, as if it was covering something up. "So, Oliver," Michael began, looking at him with that wide smile, "are you excited to be my best man?" Oliver forced a nod, glancing quickly at his mum, who gave him an encouraging look. "Yeah, I guess so," he mumbled. Michael chuckled, patting him on the shoulder a little too hard. "That's the spirit," he said. Then, after a brief pause, he added, "You know, when I was your age, I always wanted a little brother." The comment made Oliver's stomach churn. A little brother? Oliver could barely handle the idea of having Michael as a stepdad. The thought of a bigger family, more people to share his mum with, made him feel small and invisible. As the evening wound down, Oliver found himself alone in the hallway while his mum and Michael cleaned up in the kitchen. He was about to head back to his room when he overheard Michael's voice, low and hushed. "Just need to finalize that policy and then we're all set." "It's just a formality," Michael said. Oliver stopped, his ears straining to catch the conversation. The tone of Michael's voice had changed, less cheerful, more calculated. He didn't hear his mother's response, but whatever Michael was talking about, it made Oliver feel uneasy. What kind of policy was he talking about, and why was he saying it in that way? That night, Oliver lay awake in bed, his mind racing. He had a feeling that something wasn't right, but every time he tried to explain it, the words slipped away, leaving only that gnawing unease. He wanted to talk to his mum, to tell her what he was feeling, but he was afraid she wouldn't understand. She seemed so happy, so wrapped up in the wedding plans that he didn't want to ruin it for her. But the more he thought about it, the more he felt that he had to do something. He couldn't shake the image of Michael's face when he mentioned the policy. There was something there. A glint of calculation that Oliver had only seen in movies or read about in his adventure books. It was the look of someone who was planning something that no one else could see coming. In the days that followed, Oliver kept a close watch on Michael. He listened to every word he said, every phone call he made, and every look he gave his mother. His suspicion grew with every passing day, and with it, his determination to protect his mum, no matter what. One rainy afternoon, as he was coming back from school, he saw Michael's car parked in front of the house. Peeking through the window, he watched as Michael had a heated conversation on his phone, gesturing angrily as he spoke. Though he couldn't hear the words, Oliver's unease deepened. That night at dinner, Oliver decided to speak up. "Mum," he began, his voice soft. Do you know a lot about Michael?" Lily looked at him, surprised. "What do you mean, sweetie?" "Like, do you know if he's a good person?" he asked, choosing his words carefully. Lily's face softened as she reached across the table to hold his hand. "Oh, Ollie," she said gently, "I know this is all very new for you, but Michael's a good man. I trust him. I want you to try to trust him too." Oliver nodded, but his heart was heavy. The feeling that something was wrong hadn't gone away. If anything, it had only gotten stronger. And he knew that somehow, some way, he would have to find a way to protect his mother, even if she couldn't see the danger right in front of her. Oliver's distrust of Michael only grew over the next week. Every time Michael came over, Oliver would quietly slip away to watch him, listening carefully from the shadows. He started to pick up little things, words and actions that seemed out of place. But whenever he tried to piece it together, the picture remained blurry, just beyond his reach. One evening, Oliver sat on the edge of his bed, gripping his pillow as he thought about what he'd heard that afternoon. Michael had been in the living room with his mum, talking about the wedding plans, but his voice had taken on a different tone when he thought Oliver wasn't around. "If we push it back even one more month, I'll have to start all over again," Michael had said, his voice tight with irritation. Oliver could sense the impatience in Michael's words. It wasn't the way someone would usually talk about a wedding, and Oliver couldn't shake the feeling that Michael was running out of time for something. When Oliver looked up, he noticed the dim glow of his bedroom light casting shadows on the wall. He got up, slipped quietly down the hallway, and peered into the living room where Michael was still talking to his mum. There was something unsettling in his face, a hardness, an edge that disappeared the moment he glanced toward the door and caught Oliver watching. "Hey, sport!" Michael's face lit up with a forced smile. "What are you doing up? Shouldn't you be in bed by now?" Oliver forced himself to smile, feeling his stomach twist with unease. "Just getting a drink of water," he replied, hoping his voice didn't betray him. As Oliver backed away, Michael's gaze lingered on him, his smile slowly fading as Oliver slipped back into the shadows. The next morning, Oliver woke up with a fresh determination. If no one else was going to notice these things, then he'd have to do it himself. After all, he was the only one who seemed to care about protecting his mum. He decided to take a closer look at the papers Michael kept in his study. Maybe they'd hold the answer to why he felt so uneasy. After school, he hurried home, knowing his mum was still at work. The house was quiet as he slipped into Michael's study, which still felt like an invasion of privacy, even though Michael wasn't officially living with them yet. He went through the drawers carefully, his fingers brushing over stacks of neatly organized papers. He didn't know exactly what he was looking for, but he hoped he'd know it when he saw it. After a few minutes, he came across an envelope marked "Policy" in bold letters. His heart pounded as he unfolded the paper inside. It was an insurance policy signed by Michael, and Lily's name was listed as the primary beneficiary. The amount was staggering, far more money than Oliver had ever imagined. Why would Michael need to take out such a large policy, especially with Lily's name on it? Just then, he heard the creak of the front door opening. His heart leapt into his throat as he quickly folded the paper and stuffed it back into the drawer. He scrambled out of the room and ran up the stairs just as Michael's voice echoed in the hallway. "Oliver, you home?" Oliver ducked into his room and sat on his bed, forcing himself to breathe. After a moment, he heard footsteps coming up the stairs and braced himself, hoping his face didn't show any sign of what he'd just discovered. Michael appeared at the doorway, smiling as usual, though there was a flicker of suspicion in his eyes. "Hey, buddy, you okay?" Oliver nodded quickly. "Yeah, I was just reading." Michael glanced around, as if looking for something out of place, then smiled and gave a casual nod. "All right, well, dinner's in an hour. Come down when you're ready." Oliver forced a smile as Michael left, his heart still pounding from the near miss. That night, Oliver lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He couldn't ignore the uneasy feeling in his chest. It was like pieces of a puzzle slowly coming together, each one more unsettling than the last. The insurance policy, the strange way Michael spoke about the wedding timeline, his need to convince his mother that Oliver was coming around, it all pointed to something hidden, something that he didn't fully understand yet but knew was wrong. For the next few days, Oliver kept his distance from Michael, pretending to be absorbed in his schoolwork or projects whenever he was around. But his mind was constantly churning, running over everything he'd seen and heard, searching for clues that might help him unravel the mystery. Then one afternoon, he came home to find Michael sitting in the living room, talking to a woman he didn't recognize. She was beautiful, with sharp features and an air of confidence that made her seem like she was in control of everything around her. Oliver slipped quietly behind the staircase, watching as she and Michael spoke in hushed tones. Emily, you can't just show up here like this, Michael hissed, glancing around nervously. Oh, relax, she replied with a smirk. Lily's not here and the kid doesn't suspect a thing. Michael's eyes flicked toward the staircase, and Oliver held his breath, pressing himself flat against the wall. We're this close, Michael said, his voice barely a whisper. As soon as the wedding's done, we're in the clear, but if anyone finds out... He trailed off, his gaze darkening. Emily just laughed, waving a dismissive hand. No one's going to find out. You just stick to the plan, and in a few weeks we'll be celebrating. Oliver's heart pounded in his chest as he took in every word. He didn't fully understand what they were talking about, but he knew it was something bad, something dangerous. After a few minutes, Emily left, and Michael remained in the living room, pacing back and forth, muttering to himself. As soon as Oliver heard the door close, he crept back up to his room, his mind racing with questions. Who was Emily? And what did she mean by stick to the plan? That night at dinner, Oliver could hardly look at his mum. He felt like he was carrying a terrible secret that he had no way of sharing with her. She was chatting excitedly about the wedding arrangements, completely oblivious to the storm brewing around her. You're going to look so handsome in your suit, Ollie, she said, smiling as she reached over to tousle his hair. Oliver forced a smile, but his mind was elsewhere. He could barely eat, his stomach twisted in knots as he thought about what he'd seen and heard. He knew he had to tell his mum, but he was afraid she wouldn't believe him. She was so happy, so wrapped up in her dreams of a new life with Michael, that he didn't want to be the one to shatter it. But as he lay in bed that night, staring into the darkness, he realized he didn't have a choice. He couldn't sit by and do nothing while Michael's secrets threatened to destroy everything he held dear. The next morning, he pulled his mum aside, just as she was heading out the door for work. Mum, can I talk to you for a minute? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She turned, her expression softening as she knelt down to his level. Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind? Oliver hesitated, the words tangling up in his throat. I don't think Michael is who he says he is, he finally said, his voice trembling. Lily's brow furrowed as she looked at him with concern. What do you mean, Ollie? I heard him talking to someone, he stammered, trying to keep his composure. They were talking about some kind of plan, and I found a paper, an insurance policy with your name on it. I don't know, Mum, but something doesn't feel right. For a moment, Lily was silent, her face a mask of confusion and worry. But then she forced a smile, gently cupping his face in her hands. Oh, Ollie, she murmured, I know this must be hard for you. But Michael isn't a bad man. He loves us, both of us. You're just scared because things are changing, and that's perfectly normal. Oliver's heart sank. She didn't believe him. The tension in Oliver's chest hadn't eased, not after his mum's dismissal, and not even after he'd told her everything he knew. He could still see the way she'd looked at him, her face soft with that patient smile, the one she used when she thought he was just being a little kid, afraid of nothing at all. But this wasn't nothing, and as much as he tried, Oliver couldn't shake the feeling that things were quickly heading in a dangerous direction. In the days following his conversation with Lily, Oliver stayed on high alert. He watched Michael's every move, tracked the sounds of his footsteps, and lingered near doorways whenever Michael was on the phone. He couldn't understand why his mum couldn't see what he did. But his mum was in love. She only saw what she wanted to see. He realized that if anyone was going to protect her, it would have to be him. One evening, as he came home from school, Oliver noticed Michael's car parked in the driveway. It was a bit early for him to be there, and the sight sent a prickle of alarm down Oliver's spine. He opened the front door quietly and slipped inside, his senses on high alert. The murmur of voices came from the kitchen, Michael and his mum, deep in a conversation he wasn't meant to hear. "Just make sure everything's set before the wedding," Michael was saying, his voice lower and sharper than usual. Lily sounded a bit uneasy. "Why are you so worried, Michael?" "Everything's been fine, hasn't it?" Michael's reply came with a hint of irritation. "I just don't want anything messing this up, okay?" Oliver crept closer, his breath barely stirring as he strained to catch every word. "Michael, you're starting to make me nervous," Lily said softly. And in her voice, Oliver could hear a glimmer of doubt, a doubt that he hoped would grow. But Michael's tone shifted, turning smooth and comforting. "Lily, sweetheart, you don't have to worry. It's just pre-wedding jitters. I want this to go perfectly for you, for us. It's going to be everything we dreamed of." He could hear his mum sigh, the tension in her voice softening, and the frustration burned in Oliver's chest. Michael was tricking her, manipulating her. How could she not see it? As their voices faded into more light-hearted talk about the wedding decorations, Oliver slipped away, heading up to his room to think. The closer the wedding day got, the stronger the feeling grew that he was running out of time. He had to find a way to stop Michael, and soon. That weekend, he got his chance. His mum was out meeting with a friend, leaving him alone in the house with Michael. Oliver was in his room, pretending to read a comic book, when he heard Michael's phone ring downstairs. It was Emily's voice on the other end, faint but unmistakable. "Hey, are you alone?" "Yeah, the kid's here, but he's just up in his room. What's up?" Michael's tone was impatient. "We're all set on my end. The account's ready, so as soon as you get her signature on that last document, we're good to go," Emily said. Oliver's blood ran cold as he listened. "Perfect," Michael replied, his voice carrying an unsettling satisfaction. "Once the paperwork's signed, we'll finally have access to everything." "Just remember," Emily added, her tone sharper, "no mistakes. We can't afford any slip-ups." There was a pause, then Michael said, "I know. Trust me, we'll be celebrating in a few days." Oliver's heart pounded as he silently crept back toward his room, the words swirling in his mind like pieces of a horrifying puzzle. Michael and Emily were planning something to take his mum's money, or worse. He thought back to the insurance policy he'd found in Michael's study and the amount of money attached to it. They were going to make sure his mum signed everything and then… what? Suddenly the pieces began to fall into place. The money, the rush to get married, Michael's insistence on having Oliver's trust, it was all part of a scheme. And Oliver knew that the only way he could protect his mum was by exposing Michael's lies, even if it meant doing it on the day of the wedding. The days leading up to the wedding were tense. Oliver tried to speak to his mum again, to tell her what he'd heard and seen, but each time he tried, she dismissed him. She was too busy with last-minute arrangements, her thoughts too wrapped up in seating charts, flower arrangements, and the excitement of her new life with Michael. She didn't see the worry etched on Oliver's face or the fear in his eyes. On the morning of the wedding, the house buzzed with excitement. Friends and family arrived, filling the living room with laughter and chatter. Lily was radiant in her wedding dress, her face glowing with happiness as she hugged Oliver tightly. "Oh, Ollie," she said, her eyes brimming with happy tears. "I know this has been hard for you, but thank you for supporting me. Today's going to be perfect." Oliver nodded, forcing a smile as he held her hand. Inside, his heart pounded with fear and determination. Today, he would finally make her see the truth. The wedding was held in a beautiful park, with rows of white chairs lined up beneath a sprawling oak tree. Guests filled the seats, murmuring with excitement as they waited for the ceremony to begin. Oliver stood at his mother's side, his small frame stiff with tension, as he scanned the crowd, his gaze landing on Michael and Emily, who were standing together near the front. As the officiant began speaking, Oliver felt his pulse race. This was his last chance. He took a deep breath, his fists clenched, as he stepped forward. "Mom, wait!" he called out, his voice trembling but strong. The crowd fell silent, all eyes turning to him. His mother looked down, her face confused as she whispered, "Oliver, what are you doing?" "I can't let you do this," Oliver said, his voice breaking. "Michael, he's lying to you." A murmur rippled through the crowd, guests exchanging puzzled looks as Oliver continued. "He doesn't love you, Mom. He's just here for the money, the insurance, the bank accounts. I heard him talking to that woman, Emily. They're planning to take everything you have." His mother's face paled, her hand clutching his as she struggled to make sense of his words. "Ollie, this isn't the time." "It's true," Oliver insisted, his voice rising. "I heard them. They've been planning this for months." He turned to Michael, his eyes blazing with anger. "Tell her the truth. Tell her what you're really here for." Michael's expression hardened, his easy charm slipping as he stepped forward, trying to keep his composure. "Oliver, you've misunderstood. I don't know what you think you heard, but—" "Don't lie!" Oliver shouted, his voice ringing through the silence. "I saw the insurance papers. I heard you talking about the accounts. I know everything." Lily's face twisted with confusion and pain as she looked between her son and her fiancé, her gaze searching Michael's face for answers. "Michael, is this true?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. For a moment, Michael faltered, his expression flickering between anger and fear. But then he laughed, a low, bitter sound that sent a chill through the crowd. "All right," he said, his voice dropping as he looked at Lily with cold eyes. "Yes, it's true. So what? Do you really think anyone here cares? You're just a single mum with a few dollars to her name. No one would believe you if you tried to stop me." Lily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as the truth hit her like a wave, the betrayal cutting deeper than she could have ever imagined. Before anyone could react, Michael turned to leave, grabbing Emily's arm as he pulled her along with him. But as they tried to push past the guests, a police officer, alerted by one of the wedding attendees, stepped forward, blocking their path. "Excuse me, sir," the officer said, his tone cold and authoritative. "We're going to need to ask you a few questions." Michael glared at him, his face twisted with fury, but there was no escape. The crowd watched as he was led away, his plans crumbling to dust in front of him. In the aftermath, Lily knelt down beside Oliver, pulling him into a tight embrace. Her tears fell softly onto his shoulder, her voice choked with emotion as she whispered, "Oh, Ollie, I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you." Oliver hugged her back, relief flooding through him as he finally felt the weight lift from his shoulders. He'd done it. He'd saved her. The wedding that had been meant to start a new chapter for Lily and Michael had instead become the day Oliver's courage saved the woman he loved most. Though there would be healing to do and trust to rebuild, he knew one thing for certain. They would face it together, just like they always had. In the days following the ruined wedding, a quiet settled over the house. The whirlwind of excitement and anticipation was replaced by an emptiness that Oliver hadn't expected. His mum, normally so light-hearted and quick to laugh, had retreated into herself. She still took him to school, still made him breakfast, still helped with his homework, but her mind seemed elsewhere, and her eyes held a distant sadness that worried Oliver deeply. One evening, about a week after the wedding, they sat together on the couch in the dim light of the living room, a book open between them that neither was truly reading. Lily reached out and smoothed a hand over his hair, her touch gentle, like a comfort she needed as much as he did. "You know, Ollie," she began softly, her gaze lingering on the wall, "I feel like I owe you an apology." Oliver looked up at her, surprised. "Mom, you don't need to say sorry." "Yes, I do." She turned to him, her face lined with regret. "You tried to tell me so many times. You saw what I couldn't see, and I didn't listen. I wanted to believe so badly that Michael was going to make everything better. But you knew better." She swallowed, her voice trembling slightly. "I didn't protect you, and I should have." Oliver shook his head, reaching out to take her hand. "You didn't do anything wrong, Mum. You were just trying to be happy. I wanted that for you too." A tear slipped down Lily's cheek, and she pulled him into a tight embrace. "You're a special kid, Ollie. You're stronger than I realized. Stronger than I am." They stayed like that for a while, wrapped in the warmth of each other's arms, each finding comfort in the other. And as the days turned into weeks, a new sense of calm settled over them. Lily slowly returned to her old self, but something in her had changed and Oliver could feel it. She was more cautious, more watchful, as if she had learned to see the world through his eyes. One afternoon after school, they decided to take a walk through the park, the same park where the wedding had been held. It had become a place they visited often, as if reclaiming it as their own helped erase the bad memories. They walked in silence for a while, the crisp autumn air filling their lungs until Lily finally spoke. "I've been thinking, Ollie," she said, glancing down at him with a soft smile. "Maybe it's time we moved somewhere new, somewhere we can have a fresh start." Oliver looked up at her, feeling a mix of excitement and relief. "Really? You mean like a new house?" She nodded. "I think it might be good for us. A place with no memories of all of this. A place that's just ours." Oliver grinned, a spark of happiness lighting up inside him. "I think that would be awesome, Mum." Over the next few weeks, they searched for houses together, taking weekend trips to nearby neighborhoods, visiting homes and imagining what their new life would look like. Each time they stepped into a new house, Oliver felt a sense of possibility blooming in his chest. It was as if the shadows of Michael's betrayal were finally fading, replaced by a bright, open future. One Saturday, they visited a small house on the edge of a quiet street. It was cozy, with a big backyard and a tree with branches that stretched out like arms, perfect for climbing. The moment they stepped inside, both Lily and Oliver knew it was the one. The rooms were filled with sunlight, and the air felt warm, welcoming. It was a place that felt like home. After they signed the papers, the weeks flew by in a blur of packing, cleaning, and saying goodbye to the neighborhood they'd lived in for so long. On their last night in the old house, they sat on the floor of the empty living room, eating pizza and reminiscing about the memories they'd made there. Oliver could tell his mum was a little sad to leave, but he knew she was also excited to start fresh. The day they moved into the new house, the sky was clear, the sun shining brightly as they carried boxes into each room, laughing and chatting as they set up their new life. As they unpacked, Lily came across a small box filled with pictures, memories of Oliver's childhood, snapshots of their life together. "Look at this one," she said, holding up a photo of Oliver as a toddler, his face covered in cake, a huge grin on his face. Oliver laughed, cringing a little. "I was such a mess." "That was your third birthday," Lily said with a smile. "You were so excited, you didn't even wait for a fork, just dove right in." They spent hours going through the photos, reliving the memories, each picture a reminder of the life they'd built together. By the end of the evening, their new home felt less like a strange house and more like a part of them, filled with pieces of their past and hopes for the future. As the weeks passed, they settled into their new routines, exploring the neighborhood and meeting new people. Oliver felt a lightness he hadn't felt in a long time, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. He made friends at his new school, and each day felt like a new adventure, a fresh start that was truly theirs. One weekend, as they were cleaning out the garage, they found an old wooden chest tucked away in the corner. Curious, they opened it and discovered a collection of old tools, bits and pieces of wood, and a set of paintbrushes and cans of paint. It was dusty and forgotten, but Lily's eyes lit up as she looked through it. "You know, I've always wanted to try making something," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "Maybe a table or a bookshelf?" Oliver grinned. "That would be awesome. We could make something together." And so, over the next few weeks, they spent their weekends in the garage, working on their project. They measured, cut, sanded and painted, turning the old tools into something new. Together they created a beautiful wooden bookshelf, a piece that was uniquely theirs, crafted with love and laughter. One evening, as they admired their finished work, Lily looked down at Oliver, her eyes filled with pride. "You know, Ollie," she said, her voice soft, "I don't think I could have gotten through all of this without you." Oliver smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "We got through it together, Mom." Their days continued to fill with moments like these, small, quiet moments of connection, of laughter and love. The darkness that had once loomed over them faded into distant memory, replaced by the warmth of the life they'd rebuilt. But as much as they tried to leave the past behind, Oliver sometimes still thought about that day at the wedding, about the way he'd had to be brave for both of them. He knew he'd never be the same boy he was before, but he was okay with that. In a way, he was proud of how much he'd grown, of the strength he'd discovered within himself. One evening, as he lay in bed, listening to the quiet of their new home, he whispered a silent promise to himself. "I'll always protect her," he murmured, closing his eyes. "No matter what." And with that promise, he drifted off to sleep, the worries of the past replaced by the quiet peace of their new life. As autumn turned to winter, Lily and Oliver's new life took on a gentle rhythm. Their days were filled with routines of school, work, and evenings spent together, cooking dinner or working on their latest project in the garage. But while their lives had settled, the events of the past still lingered, like a faint shadow neither could quite shake. One evening, after dinner, Lily looked up from the table, her face thoughtful. "Ollie," she began, her tone hesitant, "there's something I've been wanting to talk to you about." Oliver put down his fork, watching her with curiosity. "What is it, Mom?" She smiled, a soft but sad smile, and reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "You've been so brave through everything we went through with Michael. You protected me when I wasn't protecting myself. I think it's time I find a way to thank you properly." Oliver shook his head, squeezing her hand. "You don't have to thank me, Mum. I'd do it all over again if I had to." A tear sparkled in her eye, but she quickly blinked it away. "I know, sweetheart. But I want to show you that I see everything you did for me, everything you sacrificed. So, I have a surprise for you." Oliver's eyes lit up, his curiosity piqued. "What kind of surprise?" Lily's smile widened. "How would you like to go on a trip? Just the two of us. Somewhere special. somewhere far away. Oliver's mouth dropped open in delight. "Are you serious? That would be amazing." "Yes," Lily said, her voice warm and full of love. "I think we could both use a little break. Somewhere we can make new memories." The next few weeks passed in a blur of excitement as they planned the trip together. Lily chose a cozy mountain town famous for its winter scenery, with a little cabin nestled among pine trees and snow-covered hills. Oliver spent his days dreaming about the snow, the frozen lake, and the cozy nights by the fire they'd have together. When the day of the trip arrived, they packed their suitcases, bundled up in coats and scarves, and set off on the long drive. The mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks dusted with snow, the pine trees thickening as they climbed higher. Oliver pressed his face to the car window, watching the scenery with wide-eyed wonder. As they pulled up to the cabin, he let out a gasp of excitement. It was even more beautiful than he'd imagined, quaint and warm-looking, with smoke curling from the chimney and a wreath hanging on the door. Snow blanketed the ground, sparkling in the late afternoon light. Inside, the cabin was warm and inviting, with a crackling fire in the stone hearth and soft blankets draped over the couch. Lily set down their bags and turned to him with a grin. "Welcome to our little getaway, Ollie," she said, holding her arms out as if showing him a piece of magic. Oliver smiled back, his heart swelling with gratitude and happiness. "It's perfect, Mum. Thank you." That evening, they made hot cocoa and sat by the fire, wrapped in blankets and talking about everything and nothing. For the first time in a long while, Oliver felt completely at peace, as if the weight of the past year had finally lifted from his shoulders. The days passed in a blur of snowy hikes, quiet mornings sipping hot chocolate, and long walks by the frozen lake. Oliver and Lily spent their evenings playing board games or reading by the fire, talking and laughing late into the night. It was as though they were rediscovering each other in this cozy, quiet world of their own. One evening, as they sat watching the flames dance in the fireplace, Lily turned to him, her face thoughtful. "You know, Ollie, I've been doing a lot of thinking about everything that happened. About Michael and how I let him come between us." She hesitated, her gaze fixed on the fire. "I don't think I'll ever forgive myself for that." Oliver looked up, surprised. "Mum, you don't have to feel bad. You were just trying to be happy." Lily shook her head, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "I know, but I should have listened to you. I didn't see things the way you did. I didn't protect you the way I should have." Oliver squeezed her hand. "But you did, Mom. You've always protected me. And you helped me learn to protect you too. We're a team, remember?" She smiled, a glimmer of pride in her eyes. "Yes, we are. And I'm so grateful for you, Ollie. More than I can ever say." They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the crackling of the fire. It was a comfortable silence, one filled with unspoken understanding. Lily put her arm around him, pulling him close, and they sat that way until the fire burned low, each finding peace in the warmth of the other. The next morning, Oliver woke to find the world outside transformed by a fresh snowfall. Thick, heavy flakes drifted down from the sky, blanketing the cabin and trees in a soft layer of white. He dressed quickly, pulling on his coat and boots, and ran outside, eager to explore. Lily joined him, laughing as they chased each other through the snow, throwing snowballs and building a small fort by the side of the cabin. For the first time in months, Oliver felt like a regular kid again, free from worry and fear. The world felt open and bright, filled with the possibilities of everything they could rebuild together. As the sun began to set, they returned to the cabin, cheeks red from the cold, breath coming in clouds, They made a simple dinner and ate together by the fire, watching the snow fall through the window. Lily looked across the table at Oliver, her eyes filled with a warmth he hadn't seen in a long time. "Thank you, Ollie," she said quietly, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you for always being there for me, even when I didn't deserve it." Oliver shook his head, smiling. "You deserve it, Mum. You're my mum. That's what families do. They take care of each other." A tear slid down her cheek, but she quickly brushed it away, reaching across the table to take his hand. "You're right," she said softly. "And we're going to make sure this family of ours is the best it can be." As the fire crackled and the snow fell outside, Oliver felt a deep sense of contentment, a certainty that he and his mum would always have each other's backs. Their little getaway had given them a chance to heal, to close the chapter on the pain of the past, and look forward to a new beginning. The rest of their trip passed in a blur of joy and laughter, each day bringing a new adventure. They went sledding on the nearby hill, tried ice skating on the frozen lake, though neither was particularly good at it, and spent hours exploring the snowy forest. Each moment felt like a new memory, a new piece of the life they were building together. On their last night in the cabin, they sat by the fire, a sense of quiet contentment settling over them. Lily looked at him, her eyes shining with pride and love. "Ollie, I think this is the best trip we've ever taken." He nodded, smiling. "Me too, Mom. I wish it didn't have to end." She reached out, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. "It doesn't have to, sweetheart. No matter where we go, no matter what happens, we'll always have this. We'll always have each other." As the fire burned low and the snow continued to fall outside, they sat in peaceful silence, knowing that their journey, together, had only just begun. The drive home from the cabin was quiet but peaceful. The trip had given Oliver and Lily a fresh start, a way to leave behind the heavy memories of the past and replace them with the promise of a brighter future. Now, as they made their way back to their new home, Oliver felt a comfort in his heart that he hadn't felt in a long time. The days settled back into a calm routine, but this time everything felt lighter. Oliver felt more relaxed at school, making friends with a few classmates who shared his love of building model airplanes. He even joined an after-school science club where they got to do hands-on experiments and explore things that fascinated him. Each day seemed to bring something new, and each evening he'd eagerly tell his mum all about it, his voice brimming with excitement. One evening, after Lily had tucked him in, Oliver lay awake, thinking about the changes in their lives. It was funny, he thought, how just a few months ago he'd felt like the world was caving in. Now, things felt different. They felt right. He drifted off to sleep with a smile on his face, feeling hopeful for the future. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of new experiences. Lily had started painting, turning their garage into a little art studio where she could work on the landscapes she loved. Oliver enjoyed watching her, fascinated by how the colors and shapes seemed to come alive under her brush. She would let him try his hand at painting too, laughing together as he made his best attempts at turning blobs of paint into mountains and trees. One Saturday afternoon, Lily surprised him with a visit to a nearby aviation museum. Oliver was thrilled. He'd always dreamed of seeing real planes up close. They spent hours wandering through the exhibits, marveling at the massive wingspans and intricate engines. As they stood beneath the towering fuselage of an old warplane, Oliver looked up at his mom, his eyes shining. "Do you think maybe someday I could fly one of these?" Lily smiled, brushing a hand over his hair. I think you can do anything you put your mind to, Ollie. If you want to fly, then I have no doubt you'll make it happen. The days grew warmer as spring crept in, and with the changing season came the promise of new beginnings. Lily had started a new job as a freelance writer, which allowed her to work from home and spend more time with Oliver. They spent weekends at the park, afternoons gardening in the backyard, and quiet evenings reading together, their life woven with a gentle simplicity that brought them both joy. But every now and then, late at night, Oliver would lie awake, memories of that dreadful wedding day creeping into his mind. He would replay it in his head, wondering if things could have been different if he hadn't spoken up. But every time he reminded himself of how much his mum had needed him, of how he'd done what was right, and a sense of pride would wash over him, reassuring him that he'd made the best choice. One sunny Saturday, Lily and Oliver spent the afternoon planting flowers in the backyard. The air was filled with the scent of fresh soil, and they laughed together, their hands dirty, as they carefully arranged the blossoms along the garden path. As they worked, Lily looked over at Oliver, a soft smile on her face. "You know, Ollie," she said, her voice quiet, "I think this little garden of ours is going to be something beautiful, just like our life." Oliver looked up at her, smiling. "Yeah, we built it together." They finished planting, their hands and clothes covered in dirt, but they didn't mind. They sat on the porch together, admiring their handiwork as the sun began to set. The flowers swayed gently in the breeze, a splash of colour against the green of the lawn. It was a small thing, but to them it felt like a piece of magic, a symbol of the life they'd fought to create. That evening, as they sat around the dinner table, Lily looked at him thoughtfully. "You know, Ollie, I think it's time we did something special, something to celebrate everything we've overcome." Oliver tilted his head, curious. "Like what?" "Well," she said, smiling, "I was thinking we could throw a little party. Invite some of your friends from school, maybe some of our neighbours. A sort of fresh start party." Oliver's eyes lit up with excitement. "That would be awesome. Can we have cake and decorations?" "Of course," Lily laughed. "We'll make it the best party this town has ever seen." Over the next week, they busied themselves with preparations. They made invitations together, baked cookies, and decorated the house with streamers and balloons. The night before the party, they worked late into the evening, setting up the backyard with twinkling lights and arranging the chairs and tables just so. By the time they were finished, the yard looked like something out of a storybook, a cozy haven lit by the warm glow of fairy lights. On the day of the party, guests began to arrive in the early afternoon, filling the house and backyard with laughter and chatter. Oliver was thrilled to see some of his new friends from school who had brought games and treats to share. They ran around the yard, playing tag and hide-and-seek, their voices ringing out with joy. Lily watched from the porch, her heart swelling with happiness. She chatted with neighbours and new friends, her laughter mingling with the sounds of the children playing. For the first time in a long while, she felt a true sense of belonging, of peace. As the sun dipped below the horizon, she gathered everyone around the fire pit they'd set up in the yard. With everyone seated, she looked down at Oliver, who was standing by her side, a proud smile on his face. "I just wanted to say thank you to all of you," Lily began, her voice carrying over the quiet crowd. "This year has been a journey for us, a difficult one. But thanks to all of you, and especially to my brave son, we've found a new beginning. This home, this life. It means more to us than you could ever know." She wrapped her arm around Oliver, pulling him close. "And I couldn't have done it without Ollie. He's been my rock, my support, and my hero." The crowd applauded, and Oliver felt his face flush with pride. His friends clapped him on the back, and his mum gave him a gentle kiss on the forehead. In that moment, surrounded by friends, laughter, and the warm glow of the fire, Oliver felt like the luckiest boy in the world. The rest of the evening passed in a joyful blur. They roasted marshmallows over the fire, told stories, and laughed until their cheeks hurt. When the last guests finally left, Oliver and Lily sat together on the porch, the night quiet and still around them. "That was the best party ever," Oliver said, his voice filled with contentment. Lily smiled, wrapping her arm around him. "I think so too. It was exactly what we needed." They sat together in the silence, watching the stars twinkle overhead. Oliver felt a sense of completeness, a certainty that no matter what the future held, they would be okay. They had each other, and that was enough. The next morning, they woke up to a house filled with the remnants of the party, crumbs on the floor, stray balloons hanging from the ceiling, and a warm feeling lingering in the air. As they cleaned up together, laughing over the memories they'd made, Oliver felt the last of his worries slip away. Their home was filled with love and laughter, and he knew that no matter what happened, he and his mum would face it together. Life wasn't always perfect, but it was theirs, and that made it beautiful. The summer months brought warmth and a rhythm of quiet happiness to their home. Lily and Oliver's life had settled into something comfortable and familiar, each day filling with small but precious moments. As they ventured out more, exploring new hobbies and interests, they made even more memories together, ones that would replace the painful past with a future that was bright and hopeful. One morning, as they were sitting on the porch, sharing breakfast, Lily looked over at Oliver, her face bright with an idea. "You know, Ollie," she said, "what would you think about volunteering at the animal shelter? They just opened one nearby, and I thought, well, it could be fun to help out." Oliver's eyes widened with excitement. "Really? That would be awesome. I've always wanted to work with animals." She smiled, giving him a nod. "I thought you'd like that. They're looking for extra hands to help take care of the animals and walk the dogs. We could do it together, as a little team." The following weekend, they visited the shelter, which was small and cozy, filled with cats and dogs looking for a new start. The staff welcomed them warmly, and soon they were given their tasks. Oliver's job was to help feed the dogs and cats, a responsibility he took seriously, ensuring every animal got just the right amount. They spent each Saturday at the shelter, bonding over the shared experience. Oliver grew especially attached to a little stray dog named Max, a wiry-haired terrier mix with big, soulful eyes and a wagging tail. Max had been found wandering alone in the nearby woods, and although he was a little shy, he took to Oliver right away, always nuzzling his hand for extra treats and following him around the shelter as if he were his shadow. Each time they left, Oliver would give Max a little scratch behind the ears, his heart aching as he saw Max's hopeful gaze. One evening, as they were walking home from the shelter, Oliver turned to Lily, his voice hesitant. "Mum, do you think maybe we could adopt Max?" Lily looked at him, her expression warm but thoughtful. "I've noticed how close you two have gotten. But a dog is a big responsibility, Ollie. We'd have to make sure we're ready to take care of him for a long time." Oliver nodded, his heart pounding. "I know I'd take care of him, I promise. I'd feed him, walk him, and even bathe him if I have to." She smiled, her hand gently squeezing his shoulder. "Well, if you're willing to do all that, I think we could talk to the shelter about bringing him home." The very next weekend, they finalized the adoption papers, and Max became the newest member of their little family. Oliver couldn't have been happier, They took Max on long walks around the neighborhood, played fetch in the backyard, and even took him along on their weekend hikes. He brought an extra layer of joy and companionship to their lives, and they quickly grew inseparable. One warm summer night, as they sat around a small fire pit in the backyard, Lily looked over at Oliver, her face thoughtful. "Ollie, I've been thinking," she began, "about everything that happened and how far we've come since then." Oliver looked up from petting Max, his eyes attentive. "I know that the past was painful for both of us," she continued, her voice gentle. "But I think it made us stronger. I learned so much about myself through all of this, and I learned how lucky I am to have you. You're my little hero, you know that?" Oliver's cheeks flushed with pride, a small smile creeping onto his face. I wanted to make sure you were safe, that's all. You're my mum." She reached over, pulling him close in a warm hug. "You're so much braver than I ever was at your age. And because of you, I know we can handle whatever comes our way." They sat quietly by the fire, Max curled up beside them as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky. The feeling of peace, of security, wrapped around them, reminding Oliver of all they'd overcome and the life they were building together. The weeks continued to fly by in a blur of laughter, adventure, and new experiences. With each day that passed, they grew closer, learning more about each other in ways they hadn't before. Lily started taking more art classes, bringing home new paintings every week, each one more beautiful than the last. Oliver continued working on his model airplanes, his collection growing as he perfected each one. Together they filled their home with art and creations, little pieces of themselves that turned their house into a haven. One day, as autumn returned, Oliver came home from school with an excited grin. "Mom, guess what?" he said, practically bouncing with excitement. Lily laughed, looking up from her sketchbook. "What's going on, Ollie?" "I got picked to be in the school's science fair. I'm going to build a model rocket," he said, his eyes shining with pride. She clapped her hands together, her face lighting up. "That's amazing, Ollie. I'm so proud of you. When is it?" "It's in a month, so I have a lot of work to do, but I think it's going to be awesome. Can we work on it together?" "Of course," she replied, giving him a high five. "We're a team, remember?" The following weeks were filled with rocket parts, blueprints, and hours spent in the garage as they worked together, assembling the pieces, adjusting the design, and making sure everything was perfect. Oliver was meticulous, pouring all of his energy and focus into the project, determined to make it the best rocket in the fair. Lily helped wherever she could, cheering him on and offering ideas as they brought his vision to life. Finally, the day of the science fair arrived. The school gym was packed with students, parents, and teachers, each project displayed proudly on tables for everyone to see. Oliver and Lily set up his model rocket, their hands a little shaky with nerves but filled with excitement. As they waited for the judges to make their rounds, Oliver looked up at his mom, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Mom," he said quietly, "for everything, for helping me, just for being there." Lily smiled, reaching down to squeeze his shoulder. "Ollie, you don't ever have to thank me for that. I'm always here for you. Always." When the judges reached Oliver's project, he proudly explained how he'd built the rocket, detailing each part and the science behind it. Lily watched him, her heart swelling with pride, as he spoke with confidence and passion. Seeing him so happy, so filled with joy, reminded her just how far they'd come. After what felt like hours, the winners were announced, and to Oliver's delight, he took first place in his category. They celebrated with ice cream on the way home, laughing and reminiscing about the journey that had brought them to this moment. It wasn't just about the rocket or the science fair. It was about everything they'd built together, the strength and resilience they'd found in each other. That evening, as they sat at the kitchen table, Lily looked across at him, her eyes filled with emotion. "Ollie," she said softly, "I know we've been through a lot, but I think, because of everything we've been through, we've become something stronger. We've become a family in a way that not everyone gets to experience." He nodded, a soft smile spreading across his face. "I feel it too, Mum, and I wouldn't trade it for anything." They sat in comfortable silence, each one reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. The hardship and pain of the past had shaped them, but it hadn't defined them. Instead, it had made them who they were, a mother and son united by love and strengthened by their trials. As they washed the dishes together, laughter and conversation filled the room, echoing through their home like a melody. They were happy, truly happy, and Oliver knew that no matter what challenges life threw their way, they would face them together. When he lay down to sleep that night, Oliver closed his eyes with a heart full of gratitude. He knew that they still had a long journey ahead, but he also knew that they had already overcome so much. Their lives were filled with love, laughter, and endless possibility. He drifted off with a smile, comforted by the knowledge that he and his mum had found something special, something that would carry them forward, no matter where life took them. As winter settled in, bringing chilly days and frosty mornings, Oliver and Lily's life took on a quiet, cozy rhythm. They spent their evenings by the fire, Max curled up at their feet, and filled the long, dark evenings with stories, games, and laughter. Their home, once marked by uncertainty and fear, now felt like a warm haven where love and hope flourished. One December evening, as they were decorating their Christmas tree, Lily looked over at Oliver, a thoughtful look in her eyes. "Do you remember when we used to decorate the tree in our old house?" she asked, a soft smile on her lips. Oliver paused, a delicate ornament in his hands. "Yeah, it was just the two of us. But I kind of liked it that way." Lily nodded, wrapping a strand of lights around a branch. "Me too. Those were some of my favorite times, just you and me." They shared a smile, a silent understanding passing between them. Although they had left behind that house and many of the memories it held, the bond they had forged there was stronger than ever, growing with each day they spent together in their new home. As Christmas approached, Oliver and Lily made plans for a small holiday celebration. They invited some neighbors and a few of Oliver's new friends over for a cozy evening with hot cocoa, cookies, and holiday music. Oliver was thrilled, and he spent the days leading up to the party helping his mum bake cookies, stringing lights around the house, and carefully wrapping presents for the guests. On the night of the party, their home was filled with the warmth of laughter and the scent of cinnamon and pine. The guests gathered around the living room, sharing stories and holiday cheer, while Max trotted from person to person, soaking up all the attention. For Oliver, it was a magical night, one filled with laughter and love, and as he looked around, he felt a deep sense of gratitude for the life they had rebuilt. After the guests left and the house was quiet once more, Lily and Oliver sat by the fire, sipping the last of the cocoa and watching the lights twinkle on the tree. "Thank you, Ollie," Lily said softly, her voice filled with emotion, "for making this Christmas so special. I don't know what I'd do without you." Oliver looked up at her, smiling. "I'm just happy we could have everyone over. It was fun, and it feels good having friends here." She nodded, pulling him close. "Yes, it does. I think we've found our place, Ollie. Our real home. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire dance and listening to the faint sound of carolers down the street. For the first time, both felt truly at peace, knowing they had created something strong and lasting together. The holidays passed in a blur of warmth and joy, and as the new year approached, Lily and Oliver made a list of dreams and goals for the future. They wrote down simple things, places they wanted to visit, hobbies they wanted to try, and promises to continue supporting each other. They taped the list to the refrigerator, a daily reminder of the life they were building together. One cold morning in January, as they were getting ready for school, Oliver stopped by the list and pointed to one of the items. "Mum, we haven't done this one yet," he said, tapping his finger on, "Take a trip to the beach." Lily smiled, glancing at the list. "You're right. I guess we'd better start planning, huh?" Oliver nodded eagerly. "Maybe we could go when it gets warmer, like spring break?" "Sounds perfect to me," she replied, her eyes shining with excitement. "We'll make it our first big trip." Over the next few months, they saved up for the trip, putting aside a little bit each week. They pored over travel brochures, looked up beach towns, and dreamed about all the things they would do once they arrived, building sandcastles, swimming in the ocean, and watching the sunset together on the shore. Finally, spring break arrived, and with it, their long-awaited beach trip. They packed up the car early in the morning, Max's leash and a bag of beach toys in hand, and set off for the coast. The drive was filled with laughter and excitement as they talked about all the adventures they would have and sang along to songs on the radio. When they arrived at the beach, Oliver could hardly contain his excitement. The ocean stretched out before them, a vast expanse of sparkling blue, and the sound of the waves crashing against the shore filled him with a sense of wonder. They spent the day splashing in the water, collecting seashells, and chasing Max as he darted across the sand, his little legs kicking up clouds of dust. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Lily and Oliver sat together on a blanket, watching the waves roll in. "This is amazing, Mum," Oliver whispered, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "I wish we could stay here forever." Lily put her arm around him, pulling him close. "Me too, Ollie. But you know we don't have to stay here to keep this feeling. We can carry it with us, wherever we go, as long as we're together." They watched the sun dip below the horizon, a peaceful silence settling over them. In that moment, Oliver felt a sense of completeness, a feeling that everything in their lives was exactly as it should be. The drive back home was filled with a comfortable quiet, each of them lost in thought as they replayed the memories they had made. When they arrived home, the familiar sight of their house greeted them, and Oliver felt a sense of comfort settle over him. It wasn't the beach, but it was their home, a place filled with love, laughter, and memories that would last a lifetime. As the days grew warmer and the flowers began to bloom, life continued to blossom around them. Oliver threw himself into his school projects, and Lily continued her painting, her studio filling with landscapes and scenes inspired by their trip to the coast. Their home was vibrant, alive, each day filled with the gentle, steady rhythm of their life together. One evening, as they were sitting in the backyard watching Max play, Lily turned to Oliver, a thoughtful look on her face. "Do you know what I've realized, Ollie?" she said, her voice soft. Oliver looked up, curious. "What?" She smiled, reaching over to brush a hand through his hair. "I think we're going to be okay. No matter what comes our way, we'll be okay, because we have each other." Oliver nodded, a contented smile spreading across his face. "I know, Mum. We're a team." As the stars began to twinkle above them, they sat together in the quiet of their backyard, their hearts filled with gratitude for the journey they had taken. It hadn't been an easy road, but but they had found something beautiful in the struggle, something that would carry them forward, stronger and more resilient than ever. And as they looked up at the night sky, hand in hand, they knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. The warmth of spring drifted into summer, and with it came longer days filled with sunlight and laughter. Oliver and Lily continued building the life they had dreamed of, savoring every moment as they grew together. Their house was now a haven of memories, and their days moved with the peaceful flow of family routines and small but precious rituals. One evening, as they sat in the backyard enjoying dinner, Lily looked over at Oliver, her face thoughtful but calm. "You know, Ollie," she began, her voice soft, "I've been thinking about everything we went through this past year. I never thought we'd find this kind of happiness, especially after everything with Michael. But here we are." Oliver looked up, his fork paused mid-air. "Do you ever wish things had gone differently?" She shook her head, a warm smile lighting up her face. "Number, in a strange way, I'm grateful for everything that happened. It showed me what's important. It brought us closer together. And I think it taught me to be stronger and to trust you and myself more." Oliver felt his heart swell with pride and understanding. "Me too, Mom. I feel like, I don't know, like we're stronger than we were before." She reached over and took his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "We are. And I wouldn't trade this life we've built together for anything." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the evening sky fade from pink to deep purple, a few stars beginning to twinkle above. Max lay curled up by their feet, his eyes closed, content just to be near them. The scene felt almost magical, a quiet reminder of how far they had come, how much they had healed, and how much love filled their lives. As summer days drifted into one another, Oliver and Lily continued to cherish the life they had rebuilt. They went on small adventures, explored new hobbies, and filled their home with laughter and love. And through it all, they knew they had created something unbreakable, something built from trust, resilience, and an unwavering bond. One Saturday afternoon, they decided to host a small gathering with neighbors and friends to celebrate their new beginning. As people filled their home, bringing with them laughter and stories, Lily felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't felt in a long time. She looked around, watching Oliver interact with his friends, his smile wide and his laughter easy. She knew in her heart that they had not only survived, but had grown into something stronger, something filled with hope and love. At the end of the night, after everyone had left, they sat on the porch together, looking out over their quiet neighborhood. "Mom," Oliver said, breaking the silence, "I know that things haven't always been easy, but I feel like this is how things were supposed to be. Like we're where we're meant to be." Lily wrapped her arm around his shoulders, pulling him close. "I think you're right, Ollie. Life took us on a wild journey, but it brought us here, and I wouldn't change a single thing." They sat in peaceful silence, watching as the stars lit up the sky, each twinkle a reminder of the endless possibilities before them. In that moment, they knew they had everything they needed, each other, a home filled with love, and a future they would face side by side. Thank you for joining Oliver and Lily on their journey. Their story reminds us of the power of resilience, love, and the strength that family can bring. They built a life together, overcoming challenges and finding joy in even the smallest of moments. Now it's your turn. Take a moment to reflect on what family means to you, the resilience you found in your life, and the love that has lifted you up. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your reflections in the comments below and let us know what parts of this story resonated with you the most.